Good morning and welcome to today's reflection. Bruno and I spent a few days last week in one of our favourite places, the New Forest, staying at our usual place where we could draw on the peace that you feel whilst wandering through the trees that have been there for hundreds and hundreds of years, but also enjoying the wide open spaces where horses, donkeys and cattle can roam free. We were soaking up the feeling of tranquility that both of these attributes of the New Forest bring. My plan while we were down there had been to use some of that quiet time away from the new norm of home working and the usual chores to prepare for this week's reflection. But instead, I found myself totally relaxing and actually not doing anything other than taking a short walk each day, which was part of Bruno's recovery process after his recent hip replacement. Now, that was great and I really enjoyed doing it, but it wasn't particularly helpful when it came to preparing for today. Had I wasted all those quiet hours? Well, maybe not. I had been asking for God's suggestions when it came to the reflection, and I hadn't settled on anything in particular, and I certainly hadn't written anything down while we were away, but I felt refreshed from the few days away and most definitely relaxed. So on our return, I still had a reflection to prepare and had no idea what I would end up talking about today, but God did. I just had to recognise it. On the day we came home, as we were walking the dogs in the evening, we bumped into one of our neighbours who was out walking. Although we regularly pass the time of day with him, we rarely have the opportunity to actually talk at length. But he stopped and we enjoyed a socially distanced chat with him. He very quickly explained that he was out on a de-stress walk and with just his music and his water bottle for company. His job was under threat due to the impact of COVID-19, and he won't know until the end of September whether he'll actually still have a job in October or not. Now, this was worrying him dreadfully. The family were dependent on him for financial support that they needed, and you could see the anxiety in his face as he explained his situation to us in more detail. Bruno offered some sound advice, saying that no amount of worrying would change the outcome of something that was totally out of his control. It would just make him unwell, which in turn would make things more difficult for him to face the challenges that he and his family possibly had ahead. We parted company, hoping that we had made a slight difference to his concerns. When we arrived home, sitting with a cup of tea later on, Bruno said to me, we should have told Sam, which isn't his real name, to pray rather than to worry about his situation. We had missed an opportunity to evangelise and talk to him about the power of prayer and to encourage him to try it for himself. It was so obvious now that we were back home, and yet we'd missed it. Now, the next day, Bruno and I had another conversation with a non-Christian, this time my son Toby, about how it's strange how things turn out in life and how we end up where we are, doing what we're doing. And we'd been talking about people that we knew and how things would have been so different if those people had met at different times in their lives, including Bruno and I. And how weird, in Toby's words, it was how things turned out sometimes. Now, we'd missed one opportunity the day before to talk about God, so I was sure as anything that I wasn't going to miss another one, and Toby had led me right into it. As a Christian, I start, we believe that God has a plan for all of us. The Old Testament book of Jeremiah tells us this. We don't always know what the plan is, I continue with confidence, but we are confident of its existence and the fact that the plan is a good one, one full of hope. We also know that we'll always be accompanied by God along the way, no matter what. So all of the things that happen to us, God has had a hand in. Says Toby. Now, the conversation didn't really progress much after this, as they sometimes tend to once you mention God to a non-Christian. It seems to have one of two effects, either an immediate change of subject or a very lengthy, not sure how I can answer all these questions scenario. Now, Toby had opted for the first option, and it was a sudden stop to the conversation. But Bruno and I had at least opened the door, and it is something that can be revisited in the future. So we hadn't missed this second opportunity. Later that day, as I'm scrolling through Facebook, one of the first posts I come across is from Philippians chapter 4, starting at verse 6, and it says, "Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank Him for all He has done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus." Now, this is what Bruno and I should have said to Sam the previous day, and there it was, laid on a plate via Facebook for me, ready to share with him whenever I got the next opportunity, which I may now need to engineer somehow. Now, this is the most amazing thing I find about the Bible, and I'm sure you've heard me say it before, that there is a quote for every eventuality and every situation that you find yourselves in to be hidden within it. All you have to do is flick the pages and there it is. And Google is quite good at helping out too. So God had His plans for Bruno and I this weekend, giving us 2 opportunities to share our faith. We failed at the first, but recognised that and grasped the second. Sam is still next door, so the time to share the Philippians verse may still arise. Maybe this is part of God's plan for us as a couple to share our faith together and encourage others to explore the same. What is God's plan for you? Have you asked Him lately? I would encourage you to do so and be open-minded about what He may launch in your direction. So as this reflection comes to an end, I pray that wherever you are, whatever situation you find yourselves in, that you recognise God's presence in your lives, that you pray to God about everything and worry about nothing, that you feel His peace in your hearts, and that you may be encouraged to continue asking God, "What are your plans for me?" knowing that He will fully equip you to carry out those plans and be alongside you every step of the way, nudging you in the right direction. So enjoy the rest of your week, whatever you may be doing or planning, and I look forward to bringing another reflection to you very soon. God bless.